I saw him, I knew something was wrong. His eyes, dark and intense, seemed to bore right through me. But it wasn't just the stare that sent chills down my spine. It was the fact that he vanished into thin air the second I blinked. I'd been looking forward to prom night for months. As a senior, it was supposed to be the pinnacle of my high school experience, a night of glitz, glamour, and unforgettable memories with my closest friends. We'd spent weeks planning every detail, from our dresses to our hairstyles, determined to make it perfect. The evening started just as we'd imagined. My best friends, Sophia and Emma, picked me up in Sophia's car, all of us giddy with excitement. We snapped selfies, complimented each other's outfits, and sang along to our favorite songs on the radio. The energy was electric, and I felt on top of the world. When we arrived at the venue, a grand ballroom at the local Hilton, my breath caught in my throat. The decorations were stunning, with twinkling lights and shimmering streamers transforming the space into a magical wonderland. The theme was Starry Night, and it truly felt like we'd stepped into a different universe. "This is amazing," Emma squealed, grabbing my arm. "I can't believe we're finally here." We made our way inside, our heels clicking on the polished floor. The room was already buzzing with activity, filled with our classmates in their finest attire. The DJ was playing an upbeat pop song, and several couples were already on the dance floor. "Let's get some punch," Sophia suggested, leading us towards a refreshment table. As we sipped our drinks and chatted excitedly, I scanned the room, taking in the scene. That's when I first saw him. He was standing near the edge of the dance floor, partially hidden by a cluster of balloons. At first glance, there was nothing particularly remarkable about him. He wore a simple black suit and had dark hair. But something made me look twice. It was his eyes. Even from across the room, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. He was staring directly at me, unblinking and unsmiling. A shiver ran down my spine, and I quickly looked away. "You okay, Lily?" Emma asked, noticing my sudden discomfort. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a little chilly in here." When I glanced back, the man was gone. I shook my head, trying to brush off the uneasy feeling. It was probably nothing, just my imagination running wild. The night continued, and I threw myself into the festivities. We danced, laughed, and took countless photos. For a while, I forgot all about the strange man. But then, as I was in line for the photo booth with Sophia, I saw him again. This time, he was closer, standing just a few feet away. Our eyes met, and I felt my heart skip a beat. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at me, like he knew me, even though I was certain we'd never met. I tugged on Sophia's arm. "Hey, do you see that guy over there? In the black suit." Sophia looked in the direction I was pointing. "Where?" "I don't see anyone in a black suit." I blinked, and just like before, he was gone. "Never mind," I mumbled, my unease growing. As the night wore on, I kept catching glimpses of him. He'd appear in the crowd, always watching me, and then vanish when I tried to point him out to my friends. It was like a twisted game of hide and seek, and I was becoming increasingly paranoid. During a slow dance, I saw him standing at the edge of the dance floor. This time, when our eyes met, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was cold and predatory. My blood ran cold. I excused myself from my dance partner and hurried over to where Emma was sitting. "Em, I need to talk to you," I said urgently. We stepped out into the hallway, where the music was muffled and we could hear each other better. "What's going on, Lily?" "You've been acting weird all night," Emma said. Concern etched on her face. I took a deep breath. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I keep seeing this man. He's wearing a black suit, and he's been staring at me all night. But every time I try to point him out to someone, he disappears. Emma's brow furrowed. "Are you sure?" "I haven't noticed anyone like that." "I'm positive," I insisted. "He's been everywhere. By the punch bowl, near the photo booth, on the dance floor. It's like he's following me." "Okay, let's think about this logically," Emma said. always the rational one. Maybe it's just someone who looks similar in different places? The lighting in there is pretty tricky. I shook my head. No, it's definitely the same person. And there's something off about him, the way he looks at me. It's like he knows me, but in a way that makes my skin crawl. Emma put a comforting hand on my arm. All right, I believe you're seeing someone. Why don't we go tell one of the chaperones? They can keep an eye out. I nodded, feeling slightly relieved that Emma was taking me seriously. We headed back into the ballroom, scanning the crowd for one of our teachers. That's when I saw him again. He was standing right by the entrance we'd just come through, impossible to miss. My heart began to race. There, I grabbed Emma's arm. That's him, right there by the door we just came in. Emma looked where I was pointing, her eyes narrowing. Lily, there's no one there. What? No, he's right. I turned back, and once again, the space was empty. But he was just there. I swear. Emma's face was a mixture of concern and skepticism. Maybe you should sit down for a bit. Do you want some water? I shook my head, frustration building. I'm not dehydrated or tired. I know what I'm seeing. Just then, Sophia joined us. Hey, what's going on? You two look serious. Before Emma could say anything, I blurted out, there's a man in a black suit who's been following me all night. He keeps appearing and disappearing. Sophia's eyes widened. What? That's creepy. Have you told a teacher? That's what we were about to do, Emma explained. But Emma doesn't believe me. I finished, unable to keep the hurt out of my voice. It's not that I don't believe you're seeing something, Emma said carefully. I'm just not sure it's what you think it is. Sophia looked between us, clearly unsure what to think. Okay, well, why don't we stick together for the rest of the night? Safety in numbers, right? I nodded, grateful for the suggestion. We made our way back to our table, my eyes constantly scanning the room. For a while, everything seemed normal. We danced, took more pictures, and I started to relax a little. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe it had all been in my head. But then, as the DJ announced the last dance of the night, I saw him again. This time, he was closer than ever, standing just a few feet away from our table. My heart began to pound so hard I could hear it over the music. Guys, I whispered urgently, he's here, right there. Both Emma and Sophia looked in the direction I was indicating. I don't see anyone, Lily, Sophia said gently. Me neither, Emma added. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. He's right there. How can you not see him? A few people nearby turned to look at us, curious about the commotion. I barely noticed them. My eyes were locked on the man in the black suit, who was now smiling that cold, knowing smile. Without thinking, I started walking towards him. I heard Emma and Sophia calling after me, but their voices seemed distant. All I could focus on was the man who had been haunting me all night. As I got closer, I could see his features more clearly. He looked to be in his 30s, with sharp cheekbones and those dark, penetrating eyes. He didn't move as I approached, just kept smiling that unsettling smile. I stopped a few feet away from him, my heart racing. Who are you? I demanded. Why are you following me? He didn't respond. He just kept staring, that smile never leaving his face. Answer me, I shouted, not caring that people were staring. Who are you? Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I whirled around to find Emma and Sophia looking at me with alarm. Lily, who are you talking to? Sophia asked, her voice shaking slightly. I turned back, ready to point out the man who was standing right in front of us. But he was gone. Again. No. I whispered. No. He was right here. You must have seen him this time. Emma and Sophia exchanged worried glances. There's no one there, Lily, Emma said softly. There hasn't been anyone there all night. I felt like I was losing my mind. How could they not see him? He'd been right there, clear as day. I think we should go, Sophia suggested. The dance is almost over anyway. In a daze, I let them lead me out of the ballroom. As we walked through the parking lot to Sophia's car, I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see the man in the black suit following us. The drive home was quiet. I could feel Emma and Sophia shooting concerned glances at me, but I kept my eyes fixed out the window. As houses and streetlights flashed by, I replayed the events of the night in my mind. Had it all been in my imagination? But it felt so real. When we pulled up to my house, Emma turned to face me from the front seat. Are you going to be okay, Lily? Do you want one of us to stay with you? I shook my head. No, I'll be fine. Thanks for everything. As I got out of the car, Sophia called out, Text us when you get inside, okay? I nodded and waved as they drove away. Standing in my driveway, I took a deep breath of the cool night air, trying to clear my head. That's when I saw him one last time. He was standing under the streetlight at the end of my driveway, watching me with those intense dark eyes. But this time, as I stared back at him, he slowly faded away like mist, leaving nothing but an empty street. I rushed inside, locked the door, and leaned against it, my heart pounding. As I looked down at my phone to text Emma and Sophia, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There, on my home screen, was a new notification. One new photo added to your prom night album. With shaking hands, I opened my photos. There, at the end of the album filled with smiling selfies and group shots from the dance, was a photo I didn't remember taking. It showed the ballroom, seemingly empty except for one figure. A man in a black suit, smiling directly at the camera with dark, knowing eyes. I never thought our senior prank would lead to sirens and police tape, but as I stood there, staring at the red stains on my hands, I realized we'd crossed a line we could never uncross. It was supposed to be the ultimate prank, harmless, hilarious, and completely unforgettable. The kind of thing that would cement our legacy as the greatest class in our high school's history. We'd spent weeks planning every detail, making sure nothing could go wrong. But everything went wrong. The night started like any other prom. The girls in their flowing dresses, the guys in their rented tuxedos, all of us buzzing with excitement and nervous energy. I arrived with my best friends, Jake and Mia, our laughter echoing through the parking lot as we made our way into the school gym. The decorations were cheesy but charming. Streamers and balloons in our school colors, a disco ball throwing sparkles across the dance floor. The theme was A Night Under the Stars, and someone had gone all out with glow-in-the-dark stars plastered across the ceiling. You guys ready for this? Jake whispered as we found a table. His eyes were gleaming with mischief, and I felt a flutter of excitement in my stomach. Mia nodded, her curls bouncing. Operation Red Rain is a go. I grinned, feeling the weight of the small bottle in my pocket. Fake blood, completely harmless, but incredibly realistic. Our plan was simple. At the stroke of midnight, when they announced the prom king and queen, we'd unleash chaos. Fake blood would rain down from strategically placed containers above the stage, dousing the winners in a shower of red. Harmless, hilarious, unforgettable. For the first few hours, we played it cool. We danced, we laughed, we posed for cheesy photos. I even slow danced with my crush, Sarah, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it over the music. As midnight approached, we made our excuses and slipped away. The bathrooms were our designated meeting spot, private enough to avoid suspicion, but close enough to the gym to hear the announcements. Jake was already there when I arrived, fiddling with his bottle of fake blood. "Where's Mia?" I asked, glancing at my watch. He shrugged, probably fixing her makeup or something. You know how she is. I nodded, but something felt off. Mia was usually punctual, especially for something this important. "I'll go check the girls' bathroom," I said. As I approached the door, I heard a muffled sound, like someone crying. My stomach twisted. "Mia?" I called out softly, pushing the door open slightly. The sight that greeted me would haunt my nightmares for years to come. Mia was there, all right. She was hunched over the sink, her beautiful blue dress stained with red. For a split second, I thought she'd spilled the fake blood. But then I saw her face in the mirror, pale, terrified, her mascara running in black streaks down her cheeks. Mia, what? I didn't mean to, she whispered, her voice breaking. Oh, God, I didn't mean to. That's when I saw it. On the floor, partially hidden by a stall door, was a shoe. A person's shoe, with a foot still in it. My world tilted on its axis. This wasn't fake blood. This was real. What happened? I managed to choke out, my mind reeling. Mia turned to me, her eyes wild with panic. It was an accident. She caught me setting up the prank. We argued, and she slipped, hit her head on the sink. There's so much blood, Alex. So much blood. I felt like I was going to be sick. This couldn't be happening. Not on prom night. Not to us. We need to call for help, I said, reaching for my phone with shaking hands. No! Mia grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. We can't. They'll know it was us. Our lives will be over. Mia, someone is hurt. We can't just. Please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. Help me clean this up. We can say it was part of the prank. No one will know. I stared at her, horrified. What she was suggesting was wrong on so many levels. But as I looked at my best friend at the terror in her eyes, I felt my resolve weakening. Okay, I heard myself say, as if from a great distance. Okay, we'll fix this. The next few minutes were a blur. We worked quickly, using paper towels to mop up the blood. I tried not to look at the unconscious girl on the floor, focusing instead on the mechanical motions of cleaning. Jake's voice from outside the door made us both jump. Guys, what's taking so long? It's almost time. I exchanged a panicked look with Mia. Stall him, she whispered urgently. Stepping out of the bathroom, I plastered on what I hoped was a convincing smile. Hey, man, slight change of plans. We're, moving the prank to after the coronation. Jake's face fell. What? Why? Mia's idea. I lied, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. She thinks it'll have more impact. He looked skeptical but shrugged. If you say so. I'll go put the blood back in my locker. As he walked away, I felt a wave of relief, quickly followed by a tsunami of guilt. What were we doing? Back in the bathroom, Mia had managed to drag the unconscious girl into a stall. We need to get rid of the bloody paper towels, she said, her voice eerily calm now. I nodded numbly, gathering them up. I'll take them to the dumpster behind the gym. As I hurried down the hallway, the wadded-up paper towels felt like they were burning a hole in my pocket. The music from the gym seemed distant and distorted, like it was coming from underwater. I had just tossed the evidence into the dumpster when I heard a scream. It came from the direction of the bathrooms. My heart in my throat, I raced back. A crowd had already gathered outside the girls' bathroom. I pushed my way through, dread growing with each step. Inside, it was chaos. A teacher was kneeling beside the unconscious girl, who had apparently been found when someone else came to use the bathroom. Mia was nowhere to be seen. Someone call an ambulance, the teacher shouted, and I watched as a dozen phones came out at once. As the sirens approached, I stood there, frozen. This wasn't how prom was supposed to end. This wasn't how our senior year was supposed to end. The next few hours passed in a blur of questions and confusion. Police arrived, cordoning off the bathroom as a potential crime scene. Students were questioned, but in the chaos of prom night, no one seemed to have noticed anything unusual. No one except me and Mia. I caught glimpses of her throughout the night, her face a mask of calm as she answered questions. Our eyes met once, and I saw a silent plea in them. Don't say anything. As dawn broke, we were finally allowed to leave. The girl, whose name I learned was Emily, had been taken to the hospital. She was alive, but in critical condition. I found Mia in the parking lot, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. "We stick to the story. It was a prank gone wrong. That's all. But Mia, we can and we will." She cut me off. "Unless you want to throw away your entire future." I wanted to argue, to tell her this was crazy. But as I opened my mouth, I saw a flash of red on my hands, blood that I had missed in the cleanup. The weight of what we'd done, of the choice we'd made, came crashing down on me. We were in this now, for better or worse. As we drove home in silence, the first rays of sunlight painting the sky, I couldn't help but think about Emily. Was she going to be okay? Would she remember what happened? And what about us? How long could we keep this secret? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more terrifying than the last. One thing was clear. Our prank had turned into something far darker than we ever could have imagined. And as I looked at Mia's profile, illuminated by the rising sun, I realized that this night had changed us forever. The red stains on my hands might wash away, but the stain on our souls? That would take far longer to fade. The punch tasted off, but I couldn't quite place why. It wasn't until I saw Ethan collapse that I realized we were all in danger. I'd been chaperoning proms for years, but this one was different from the start. Maybe it was the tension in the air or the way the kids seemed on edge. Whatever it was, it had my teacher's instincts on high alert all night. The gym had been transformed into a glittering wonderland with twinkling lights and shimmering decorations everywhere. This year's theme was Enchanted Forest, and the prom committee had gone all out. Fake trees lined the walls, their branches intertwined with fairy lights. The effect was magical, but something about it felt off to me. I'd stationed myself near the refreshment table, keeping an eye on the punch bowl. It was a notorious target for spiking, and I was determined not to let anything slip past me. The first few hours were uneventful. Kids danced, laughed, and took countless selfies. Normal prom stuff. It was around 10 p.m. when I first noticed something strange. A group of students near the DJ booth were acting. Odd, they were laughing too loudly, stumbling a bit. My first thought was alcohol, but I'd been watching the punch bowl like a hawk. There's no way they could have spiked it. I made my way over to them, trying to look casual. "Everything okay over here?" I asked, pitching my voice to be heard over the music. One of the girls, Melissa, turned to me with glassy eyes. "MS. Harper, everything's great. Great." She drew out the word, giggling. I frowned. "Melissa, have you been drinking?" She shook her head vigorously, then seemed to regret it, swaying slightly. "No, ma'am. Just punch. Lots and lots of punch." That's when I tasted it myself. Just a small sip from a cup on the table. It tasted wrong. Not like alcohol, but something else. Something chemical. My heart started racing. If someone had put something in the punch, half the students here could be affected. I needed to act fast. I hurried back to the refreshment table, ready to dump out the punch bowl, when I saw Ethan. He was a quiet kid, always kept to himself. Now he was standing by the punch bowl, swaying dangerously. "Ethan?" I called out, quickening my pace. He turned to me, his eyes unfocused. "MS. Harper, I don't feel so." He never finished the sentence. His eyes rolled back, and he crumpled to the floor. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then chaos erupted. Kids started screaming. Some rushed to Ethan's side, while others backed away in fear. I dropped to my knees beside him, checking his pulse. It was there, but weak and erratic. Someone called 911. I shouted, my teacher voice cutting through the panic. As one of the other chaperones made the call, I surveyed the room. More students were showing signs of whatever this was. Some were throwing up, others were disoriented or passed out. I stood up, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Nobody drink the punch, I yelled, my voice echoing through the gym. If you've had any, come to me immediately. Kids started crowding around me, fear evident in their eyes. I tried to project calm, but inside, I was terrified. What had they ingested? How dangerous was it? MS. Harper, what's happening? One of the students asked, her voice shaking. I think someone put something in the punch, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We need to figure out who's affected and get them help. As if on cue, the lights in the gym flickered, then went out completely. Screams erupted again, this time tinged with genuine terror. Everyone stay calm. I shouted into the darkness. Use your phone lights if you have them. Stay where you are. The glow of dozens of cell phones illuminated the gym, casting eerie shadows. In the dim light, I could see more students collapsing. This was bad. Really bad. I heard a loud thud from across the room, followed by the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. My blood ran cold. Someone was trying to block the exits. The doors! I yelled to the other chaperones. Check the doors. But it was too late. By the time we reached them, they were already secured from the outside. We were trapped. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. But I forced it down. These kids needed me to be strong, to figure this out. Okay, listen up, I called out, using a chair to elevate myself. If you haven't had any punch and you're feeling okay, I need you to help those who are sick. Get them to the sides of the room. Make them comfortable. If anyone has any medical training, now's the time to use it. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Those still able to function helped move their classmates, creating a makeshift triage area along one wall. I moved among them, checking pulses, making sure no one was in immediate danger of choking. As I worked, my mind raced. Who would do this? And why? This went beyond a simple prank. This was deliberate, dangerous. MS. Harper. A small voice caught my attention. It was Sarah, one of my AP English students. I think I know what happened. I knelt beside her, my heart pounding. What is it, Sarah? She swallowed hard, tears in her eyes. I saw someone by the punch bowl earlier. They were putting something in it. I thought it was just alcohol, so I didn't say anything. I'm so sorry. Who was it, Sarah? This is important. She shook her head. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't a student. Older guy, maybe in his 40s. He had on a janitor's uniform. A chill ran down my spine. We didn't have any male janitors that age. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Having fun yet, MS? Harper. My blood ran cold. This wasn't random. Someone was targeting us specifically. Another text came through. Let's play a game. You have 1 hour to figure out the antidote. It's somewhere in the gym. TikTok. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room. But I couldn't. I had to stay focused for the kids. Listen up. I called out again. We need to search the gym. There's an antidote hidden somewhere. Look for anything out of place. Anything that doesn't belong. The next hour was the longest of my life. We tore the gym apart, searching every nook and cranny. Kids who were still able to function joined in, desperation fueling their efforts. All the while, I kept getting texts, taunting messages, hints that led nowhere. It was like some sick game to whoever was behind this. With 10 minutes left on the countdown, we still hadn't found anything. More students were unconscious now, and those still awake were terrified. That's when I noticed something. One of the fake trees looked off. Its bark seemed different from the others. Heart pounding, I approached it. Up close, I could see a small seam running down the trunk. With shaking hands, I pressed it. A compartment popped open, revealing a small vial of clear liquid and a note. Congratulations. Add this to water and distribute. But choose wisely. There's only enough for half. I stared at the vial in horror. How was I supposed to choose who to save? But there wasn't time to agonize. Kids were dying. I had to act. I need water, I shouted. And cups. Lots of cups. As students scrambled to comply, I diluted the antidote as much as I dared, praying it would be enough. We started with the worst affected, those who were unconscious or barely breathing. Slowly, agonizingly, they started to improve. Color returned to their cheeks. Their breathing steadied. Just as we administered the last of the antidote, we heard sirens outside. The cavalry had finally arrived. The next few hours were a blur of ambulances, police, and frantic parents. As the last student was loaded into an ambulance, a detective approached me. MS, Harper, we're going to need to ask you some questions. I nodded numbly, the events of the night finally catching up to me. As I followed him to a quiet corner, my phone buzzed one last time. The message chilled me to my core. Well played, MS. Harper, until next time. I realized then that this nightmare was far from over. Someone had targeted our school, our kids, for some twisted game. And something told me they weren't done playing. As I looked around at the destroyed gym, at the shell-shocked faces of my students, I made a silent vow. I would find out who did this, no matter what it took. Because if there was going to be a next time, I'd be damned if I let them hurt my kids again. The problem might be over, but a new, terrifying chapter was just beginning. The bouquet of roses arrived on my doorstep, beautiful and nameless. It was the third gift this week, and the knot in my stomach tightened. Someone was watching me, and prom night was closing in. I'm not the kind of girl who usually gets anonymous gifts. I'm Jamie Carlson, your average high school senior. Decent grades, a spot on the volleyball team, and a small circle of close friends. Nothing special, nothing that would warrant a secret admirer. At least, that's what I thought. It started small. 2 weeks ago, I found a single daisy in my locker. Sweet, I thought, assuming it was from my lab partner, Alex. He'd been hinting at asking me to prom, but when I thanked him, he looked confused. Wasn't me, he said with a shrug. Looks like you've got a secret admirer. I laughed it off, but something about his words made me uneasy. The next day, there was a small box of my favorite chocolates, the expensive kind from that boutique downtown. No note, just like the flower. Okay, this is getting weird, I told my best friend Zoe as we walked to class. Who would go to all this trouble? Zoe's eyes lit up. Maybe it's Jason. He's always staring at you in English. I rolled my eyes. Jason can barely string 2 words together around me. No way he's pulling off some elaborate gift scheme. But as the days passed, the gifts kept coming. A bracelet I'd admired in a store window last month. A rare edition of my favorite book. Each one perfectly tailored to my taste. Each one signed. At first, it was flattering, exciting even, but as prom drew nearer, the tone of the gifts changed. They became more intimate. A silk scarf with my initials embroidered on it. A framed photo of me at a volleyball game, one I didn't remember anyone taking. That's when the unease turned to fear. The roses were the last straw. They arrived the morning of prom, a massive bouquet of deep red blooms. The card simply read, "Can't wait to see you tonight." I stared at the words, my hands shaking. This wasn't sweet anymore. This was terrifying. "Mom!" I called out, my voice cracking. "Mom, I need to talk to you." She came running, took one look at my face and the roses, and pulled me into a hug. "Oh, honey, what's going on?" I spilled everything, the gifts, the escalating nature of them, my growing fear. To her credit, she listened without interrupting, her face growing more concerned with each word. "We should call the police," she said when I finished. I shook my head. "And tell them what? Someone sending me gifts? They'll laugh us out of the station." "Jamie, this isn't just gifts. This is stalking. It's serious." I knew she was right, but the thought of making a big deal out of this, of everyone at school finding out, it was mortifying. Wait and see what happens at prom. Maybe they'll reveal themselves and it'll turn out to be nothing. She didn't like it, but she agreed to let me go to prom. On one condition. I had to stick with my friends all night, no exceptions. As I got ready that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I glanced out my window, I expected to see someone staring back. The excitement I'd felt about prom had evaporated, replaced by a constant low-level dread. Zoe and our other friends arrived in a limo, all smiles and sequins. I plastered on a grin, determined not to let my fears ruin their night. As we pulled up to the hotel where prom was being held, I took a deep breath. Just a few hours, I told myself, I could do this. The ballroom was a sea of taffeta and tuxedos, pulsing with music and laughter. For a while, I managed to lose myself in it. I danced with my friends, posed for silly photos, even shared an awkward slow dance with Alex. But every time I started to relax, I'd feel it again, that prickle on the back of my neck, like someone was staring. "You okay?" Zoe asked during a break between songs. "You keep looking over your shoulder." I forced a smile. "Yeah, just keeping an eye out for my mystery gift giver." She squeezed my arm. "Well, if they show up, we'll all be here. Safety in numbers, right?" I nodded, grateful for her support. But as the night wore on, the feeling of unease grew stronger. I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched, cataloged, every move recorded by unseen eyes. It was during a trip to the bathroom that it happened. I was washing my hands when my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. My heart leapt into my throat as I read the message. "You look beautiful tonight. That dress brings out the green in your eyes." I spun around, searching the empty bathroom. How could they know what I was wearing? Unless, with trembling fingers, I typed back, "Who are you? What do you want?" The response came almost immediately. "You know who I am. I'm the one who sees you, really sees you." A chill ran down my spine. This was real. This was happening. I had to get out of here. I burst out of the bathroom, nearly colliding with a group of giggling girls. My eyes scanned the crowded ballroom, searching for, what? A face I'd recognize? Someone staring too intently? Another text. "Don't be afraid. I would never hurt you. I love you." The words made me feel sick. This wasn't love. This was obsession. I spotted Zoe across the room and made a beeline for her. "We need to leave," I said, grabbing her arm. "Now." Her smile faded as she saw my face. "Jamie, what's wrong?" I showed her the text. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God. Okay, let's go. I'll get the others." As she went to gather our friends, my phone buzzed again. A picture this time. My blood ran cold as I opened it. It was me, right now, in this ballroom. The angle was high, like it had been taken from the balcony above. The caption read, "Why are you trying to leave? The night is young." I looked up, searching the balcony. There, a figure in the shadows, phone held out. Our eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Then the figure moved, heading for the stairs. Coming down, coming for me. Panic surged through me. I couldn't wait for Zoe and the others. I had to get out now. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the protests of people I shoved past. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear the music. Just a little further, just get to the door. I burst out into the hotel lobby, gasping for air. A few startled chaperones looked my way, but I ignored them, heading for the main entrance. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me, moving fast. Without looking back, I broke into a run, out into the night air. The cool breeze a shock against my overheated skin. I kicked off my heels, bare feet slapping against the pavement as I ran. I had no idea where I was going, only that I had to get away. "Jamie, wait!" The voice made me stumble. I knew that voice. Slowly, I turned around, standing there, out of breath and looking utterly bewildered, was Alex, my lab partner, the boy I thought might ask me to prom. "Alex," I said, my voice shaking. What are you doing?" He held up his hands, showing me his phone. "I was trying to surprise you. I've had a crush on you all year. I thought if I could show you how much I cared, how well I knew you." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The gifts, the texts. It had been Alex all along. "You've been stalking me?" I said, anger replacing fear. "Do you have any idea how terrified I've been?" His face fell. "Stalking? No, I was just trying to be romantic, like in the movies." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "This isn't a movie, Alex. This is real life. You can't just follow people and send creepy messages and expect them to fall in love with you." He looked devastated. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to scare you. I didn't know how else to tell you how I felt." As the adrenaline faded, I felt suddenly exhausted. This boy, this awkward, well-meaning boy, had turned my life upside down, all because he didn't know how to talk to a girl he liked. "Alex," I said, gentler now, "if you like someone, you talk to them. You ask them out. You don't do all this." He nodded, looking miserable. "I know that now. God, I'm so stupid. I ruined everything." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Yeah, you kind of have, but at least now I know. No more mystery, right?" Just then, Zoe and the others came running out of the hotel. "Jamie, are you okay? What happened?" I looked at Alex, then back at my friends. "It's a long story," I said. "How about we all go get some late-night pancakes, and I'll explain everything." As we walked to the nearby diner, still in our prom clothes, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The mystery was solved. The fear was gone. And while prom night hadn't turned out anything like I'd expected, I had a feeling it was a story we'd be telling for years to come. Sometimes real life is stranger than any movie, and sometimes the monsters we fear turn out to be nothing more than scared, awkward boys who don't know how to say "I like you." It doesn't excuse their actions, but it does remind us that the world isn't always as terrifying as we imagine. Sometimes it's just human. The chandelier swayed ever so slightly, and that's when I knew we weren't alone. The Rosewood Hotel might have been abandoned for decades, but something was still very much alive within its walls. I never wanted to have our prom here. When the committee announced they'd secured this historic venue for our big night, I felt a chill run down my spine. Growing up in this town, you hear the stories, the whispers about the Rosewood, about what happened here back in '62, but no one takes them seriously, at least. That's what I told myself as I stepped through those grand old doors, my silver heels clicking on the marble floor. My name's Lily Chun, and I'm not the kind of girl who believes in ghosts. Or at least, I wasn't until tonight. The hotel lobby was a mix of faded grandeur and fresh decorations. Our prom committee had done their best to spruce up the place, hanging streamers and balloons to cover the peeling wallpaper. But you couldn't hide the sense of age, of secrets, that seemed to seep from every corner. "Can you believe this place?" my best friend Zoe whispered as we made our way to the grand ballroom. "It's like stepping back in time." I nodded, trying to ignore the goosebumps on my arms. "Yeah, it's something all right." The ballroom itself was impressive, I had to admit. A massive crystal chandelier dominated the center of the room, its hundreds of facets throwing rainbows across the dance floor. Our classmates were already filling the space, a sea of colorful dresses and crisp tuxedos. "Come on," Zoe said, tugging on my arm. "Let's dance." For a while, I managed to lose myself in the music and the excitement of the night. This was our prom, after all, the culmination of 4 years of high school, one last hurrah before we all went our separate ways. I danced with my friends, laughed at the terrible DJ, and even shared a slow dance with my crush, Jamie. But every now and then, I'd feel it. A cold spot in the middle of the dance floor, a shadow in the corner of my eye that vanished when I turned to look. And always, that feeling of being watched. It was during a break between songs that I first heard it. A faint melody, different from the pop hits blasting through the speakers. It sounded like big band music, the kind of thing they would have played here in the 60s. Do you hear that? I asked Zoe, straining to catch the tune. She gave me a weird look. Hear what? The music stopped, Lily. I shook my head. No, not that. It's like old music coming from somewhere else in the hotel. Zoe's eyes widened. Oh no, don't tell me you're buying into those stupid ghost stories now. I forced a laugh. Of course not. It's probably just an echo or something. But the music didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent. And I wasn't the only one who noticed. Hey, does anyone else hear that? Jamie called out, looking around in confusion. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some people looked excited, others nervous. Our history teacher, Mr. Garrett, who was chaperoning, tried to calm everyone down. It's probably just the old pipes in this place, he said with a forced chuckle. Nothing to worry about. That's when the chandelier started to sway. At first, it was subtle, just a gentle movement that you might miss if you weren't looking directly at it. But then it grew more pronounced, the crystals tinkling against each other like wind chimes in a storm. There was no breeze in the ballroom, no wind that could explain the movement. Panic started to set in. People were pointing, whispering, some backing away from the dance floor. I felt rooted to the spot, my eyes fixed on the swinging chandelier. And then I saw her, just for a moment, a flicker really, a woman in a 1960s-style evening gown, her hair done up in an elaborate beehive. She was dancing, twirling across the balcony that overlooked the ballroom. Our eyes met, and I saw such sadness, such longing in her gaze. Then she was gone. A scream tore through the air, snapping me back to reality. The chandelier was now swinging wildly, its heavy chain creaking ominously. Everyone out! Mister, Garrett shouted, his face pale. Now! Chaos erupted. People pushed and shoved, trying to get to the exits. I lost sight of Zoe in the crowd. Somehow, I found myself being pushed towards a side door, away from the main exit. The door led to a narrow hallway, dimly lit and smelling of dust and age. The sounds of panic from the ballroom faded, replaced by that haunting big band melody. It was clearer now, as if I was getting closer to its source. Hello, I called out, my voice shaking. Is anyone there? No response, just the music, growing louder, drawing me in. I don't know what possessed me to follow it. Fear? Curiosity? Or maybe something else. Something I couldn't quite explain. But I found myself walking down that hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. The hallway opened up into what must have been a smaller ballroom. Dusty sheets covered old furniture, and cobwebs hung from the corners. But in the center of the room, impossibly, was a small band. Translucent figures playing instruments, their music filling the air with a melancholy tune. And there she was again, the woman I'd seen on the balcony. She was dancing alone, her movements graceful and sad. As I watched, other couples joined her, all of them spectral, all of them dressed in the fashions of a bygone era. I wanted to run, to scream, to wake up from what had to be a nightmare. But I couldn't move. I could only stand there, watching this impossible scene unfold before me. The woman stopped dancing and turned to look at me. A smile, soft and bittersweet, crossed her face. She held out her hand, inviting me to join her. What do you want? I managed to whisper. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded like it was coming from very far away. To be remembered, she said, to have one last dance. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was a longing in her eyes, or the hauntingly beautiful music. But I took a step forward, and another, and then I was dancing with her, my prom dress a stark contrast to her vintage gown. As we twirled across the floor, images flashed through my mind. I saw the hotel in its heyday, filled with laughter and life. I saw the woman, Elizabeth, I somehow knew, falling in love with a handsome soldier. I saw their secret meetings, their plans to elope, and then I saw the fire, the panic. Elizabeth, trapped in this very room, choking on smoke, calling out for a love who never came. Tears were streaming down my face as the dance came to an end. Elizabeth stepped back, her form already starting to fade. "Thank you," she whispered, "for dancing with us, for remembering." And then they were gone. The spectral band, the ghostly dancers, Elizabeth, all vanished as if they had never been. The room was once again just a dusty, abandoned space. I stood there for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. Was it real? Had I imagined it all? But I could still feel the lingering cold of Elizabeth's touch, still hear the fading notes of that melancholy tune. When I finally made my way back to the main ballroom, I found it empty save for a few teachers and police officers. The chandelier hung motionless, as if it had never moved. "Lily," Zoe's voice rang out, and suddenly I was enveloped in a crushing hug. "Where were you? We've been looking everywhere." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. How could I possibly explain what I just experienced? In the end, I just shook my head. "I got lost," I said. "This place is like a maze." But as we left the Rosewood that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Not just for me, but for the hotel itself. The air felt lighter somehow, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. The next day, the local paper ran a story about our prom, about the chandelier scare and the hotel's mysterious past. But at the very end, there was a small note that caught my eye. In a surprising turn of events, it read, "The current owners of the Rosewood Hotel have announced plans to restore the building to its former glory." When asked about the decision, a spokesperson simply said, "It's time for the Rosewood to live again." I smiled as I read those words, thinking of Elizabeth and her last dance. Sometimes, it takes a brush with the past to change the future. And sometimes, all a restless spirit needs is for someone to listen to their story, to remember them, if only for a moment. Our prom might not have gone as planned, but it gave me a night I'll never forget. A night that taught me that history isn't just something in books. It's alive, all around us, waiting for someone to listen. And who knows? Maybe the next time there's a dance at the Rosewood, Elizabeth and her friends will be there too, swaying to the music, finally at peace.